Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 17th edition of Unlock Brand Series. I'm happy to have Mr. Harsh Agrawal as our guest today, coming from Sudhiti Industries. So, sharing a quick background about Bradford License India. So, Bradford License India has been into brand licensing for the past 24 years, based out of US, New Jersey. The international offices that we are operating are from London, China, Hong Kong, and from India we are operating from three offices, that's Delhi, Mumbai, and Bangalore. Unlock Brand is one of the webinar series that have started off for the past, and I've been running this webinar series for the past 3 weeks, where we have been bringing, some of the renowned brands on the platform, where we talk about how the licensing has actually evolved in terms of changing the entire dynamics of the Indian retail market. How Indian brands, how national players have also come up forward, and they have started getting into the licensing domain, and they have extended really well into a couple of categories, right from the products to merchandises, and that's how the whole webinar has been focused on. So today's special edition is on sports licensing, where I'm having Mr. Agarwal from Sudhiti Industries, which is one of the pioneers when it comes to sports licensing and merchandise segment. So right from NBA to FC Barcelona, so there are a couple of brands there, and they have been the official partners over there. So welcome, Mr. Harsh, and I'm happy to have you today on this platform. So I would like to move forward with you, in terms of how Sudhiti has created that, ripples in the industry with the sports, merchandise and segment. Because sports licensing is one of the segment which is still at a very, growing stage. And with the upcoming, I would say the birth of IPLs to, local football clubs, the whole paradigm has changed. So that's where I would like to start with, Mr. Harsh, if you can take us through the whole journey of Sudhiti Industries and how you came up with the sports licensing merchandise coming from an export house, I believe, and how you actually created that entire range and everything, entire retail. So please.
Sure. First, thanks, Vatsal. Thanks, Shipra, for having me here. Yeah, about Sudhiti Industries. So, traditionally, Sudhiti actually is a garment manufacturing company. It's a family business, and we've been doing garment manufacturing since I think 1980. Sometime in 2010, my dad took the call that, which I think most manufacturers somehow feel that since we're anyway making the product, it might be so easy to actually, sell the product. So most manufacturers have that greed, and we also gave into that, let's vertically integrate, let's get into retail. Not as easy as it looked from the outside, but that journey started at least in 2010. And whilst we were in the market, we were looking at opportunities. We had our own brand right at that time. We stumbled on an opportunity in 2014 to take the license for the FIFA World Cup. So that was an event-based license. It was something that was really relevant. And it's something we said, okay, you know what, let's try that. Let's see where this goes. And the willingness to try it and take that leap also came from, as you had mentioned, that we are an export house, and we have been traditionally actually manufacturing a lot of licensed product for licensees abroad. And some of these clients include licensees for the MLB, for the NFL, and we've been doing this merchandise for over 10, 15 years. So we had a certain idea at least of, what that merchandise looked like, what that market looked like. And we said, okay, let's try that for India, in 2014. And yeah, that time it was relatively new. It was something that people weren't really being able to place what kind of product will be in the market, but we took that jump. It did really well. We were placed everywhere. It was an event. So suddenly everyone was like, what now? Because the event is over. So I think that's when also because of that, a lot of license agencies in the country, which also had this vision for sports licensing, because while Sudhiti was one of the first few to sign these licenses, I think it's agencies like you all that had that vision well before us, because you all got that opportunity to us. So I think, yeah, a lot of opportunities came our way in 2015, 2016. And that's when we signed, so the first club we signed was FC Barcelona, and very closely followed by Manchester City. And yeah, I'm really happy that we've been, it's a long journey. We've been with both these brands ever since. It's still a very good relationship, very happy relationship. And it's something that obviously when you look back, that time it was very, very new. When you look at our journey right now, it's a very relevant space. It's, as you mentioned, with leagues coming up in India, with especially maybe even Hotstar really making these leagues accessible to people. It's become really interesting because now the Indian market is finally recognizing the space. And yeah, I mean, that's something that we are now seeing that after 5 years of, really developing this space in whatever small way we're finally at the right place at the right time.
Great. Harsh, happy to have you on our 17th edition of this show. And just for our audiences to know that Bradford and Sudhiti have been associated since almost half a decade now. We've done a lot of successful licensing programs. So you spoke about how you started with the thought of expanding the export business and then entering into licensing. Uh, I would also want you to touch base a little about how what specifically any success story that you really want to mention. What were the challenges? What were the specific areas where the market was a little difficult? So primarily the best practices that you followed to venture into licensing back then when it was fairly a new concept for the Indian market.
Yeah. Okay, so I think I'll start with first what was the market then. So that time there was nothing like sports licensing in terms of industry recognition. The market, as I think agencies like y'all knew because you're obviously a lot more in touch with what's happening abroad. But in India, there was no real recognition of this industry. So just a quick parallel from then to now, I wouldn't say the industry is growing, but it's finally being recognized. So then, when it wasn't a recognized industry, and for Sudhiti as a journey, the biggest challenge was in going up to retailers and positioning the product. Because whilst we knew that we wanted to make licensed merchandise, I think the biggest roadblock was when people would hear a club's name or they would directly think jerseys or sportswear.
Yeah.
And when it came to even placing the product, they would always look at the product and then be like, but we can't place this in the sportswear section. And it took a really long time to make them understand that this is not sportswear. It's just a sports brand that is extending its brand values into a lifestyle space as well. And essentially, that is a lot of what sports licensing is. It's how can you take values that are on the pitch and you kind of convert them into value systems, into aesthetics that can be even worn, can be flaunted even off the pitch. So that it took time to drive that. So in terms of what are some of the examples where I feel we've done a good job, I would say historically the best thing that we were able to do was actually place this product in Indian retail. Because initially when it was just one club, the retailer would be like, we can't just have a single brand counter. So we started signing on more licenses. We created a bouquet of licenses. The journey which started with one club, as of today, in international clubs, we have PSG, we have Manchester City, we have FC Barcelona. We've just signed with Arsenal as well. We have in basketball, we have the NBA, which you can say is the entire sport of basketball.
Yeah.
In racing, we actually have MotoGP. In domestic leagues as well, in IPL, we have Mumbai Indians and KKR that we work with. And even in the ISL, we work with, so last year we worked with Odisha FC, ATK, FC Goa, Bangalore Football Club, and Chennai FC. And this year we're working with FC Goa, Chennai FC, and ATK Mohan Bagan. So it's really been growing for us this way in terms of the bouquet of licenses. And it's finally something that's getting easier to place. So our biggest example of success would be being able to place very few brands first at a retailer who does not initially completely understand the positioning of the product or the brand. And I would say the second biggest success for sports licensing for Sudhiti has been leveraging our manufacturing. So by that I mean, so this is something the NBA actually really taught us. They are very good at creating real-time experiences for their fans, for their customers, and it's something that we took from them. They create events in the middle of their game, in the middle of their season, and it's events that their fans celebrate. And it's something that we were able to mirror with merchandise in real time. So the minute your NBA teams qualified into the playoffs, we had a special range for each team called the playoffs range, which was launched in real time. the minute the Lakers won the championship in 2020. So I think literally the game got over. The players are seen wearing the locker room championship tee, and also we had it live on our website, the exact same T-shirt. So I think the second example, or the second uh, feather in our cap that I would be proud of, is that we are able to now leverage our merchandise in a way that we can create real-time merchandise for fans. We can create real-time experiences for them. So initially, obviously, as I told you, the industry from no recognition, it was placing the product, and now to an industry that's being recognized, it's creating customer experiences.
Sure. I totally agree with you. I think the brand's potential, timing, placement of the product, everything is very important and at the same time. So I have, we've also, with Bradford, we've also noticed a lot of licensees taking bigger marquee brands and then not being able to perform or deliver or have a successful licensing program out of it. Along with it, I think an apt usage of the style guide, a very good range plan is something which is also very important. And Sudhiti, I think, has mastered that process since a couple of years now. So, what exactly is there a process that the company follows while taking up a brand? And do you have some certain pointers in terms of which brands should be selected, or once you've signed it, what is the step-by-step process that you follow for our audiences to know that it's just not having a bigger brand on board which is important, the execution of it is also very important for delivering a successful
Yeah.
licensing program.
So yeah, I mean that's again, it's been a journey to get there. It's not that we started and we were really able to execute this, because I remember the first season that we worked with also one of the clubs. They had a great style guide. The style guide had great graphics, and we were also new in Syntax system, so we ended up exhausting all their graphics in season one. And second season, we wrote back to the club saying, "Hey, can you send us more graphics?" And they were like, that was it. That's why it's not meant for us to spoon feed you graphics. It's just meant for you to use these graphics as a benchmark to understand the club, the aesthetic of the club, what it stands for. As you mentioned, in style guides, they give you a lot of do's and don'ts that is very important for these clubs,
Yeah.
because obviously they not sitting in India trying to manage a relationship that they cannot physically be present to monitor. So, with respect to the point where you said that a lot of big companies also might take these licenses, but not be able to execute them the way they would like. I think here the biggest thing to consider is first two things: is it a really big popular club? If it is, obviously they have a great fan following. They have, I'm sure, some existing demand as well in the country,
Mhm.
which obviously from the outside looks very tempting. That why not just sign this club, and it's so easy from there.
Yeah.
But it's not as easy as just taking a club, putting its logo on T-shirts, and just that's it. It's a lot harder, because the bigger the club, the bigger the fan following, the more likely they are also to have a very mature licensing program, and with that comes a lot of barriers to gain their trust, because these big clubs also have very, very strong processes of diligence to make sure that the partner is being able to execute the merchandise as per their guidelines. And for somebody who's in it for the short run, what they'll end up seeing is that even though they've signed this contract for, let's say, a year or 2 years, they've not really been able to penetrate the market till year one and a half. And they just feel like, what have we done? What have we spent our time in? But whenever you're considering a big club with a good fan following, you need to ask yourself, can I invest in this relationship? Because the bigger thing here is having a successful relationship with these clubs, if it's being managed by a licensing agency, even with these agencies, because ultimately they need to have that confidence in you as a partner, that even if we put our neck out there with the club, the company back home will deliver. So it's about investing in that relationship. And when you go into, let's say, newer or smaller clubs where maybe the fan following might not be as large, you just need to ask yourself, are you willing to invest in a customer? Because these clubs might be small, they might be new, but you can reach those customers. Those customers are people who have never really thought that, hey, I need merchandise for this club, because it's been something that's so new. So you need to actually ask yourself, can I invest here? Can I create product they never thought they knew, and create a market they never thought they wanted to be a part of? Because it's about reaching to them, tapping on their shoulder and being like, this is a club you really follow passionately, and would you like to sport this merchandise for your club? So I think that's what you need to ask yourself. If it's a newer project, if it's a newer league, that, can you invest in the customer? But both of them need a long run focus. So it's something that, we have been able to look at. So I hope that answers at least the part on what we look at when we want to sign either a very large popular club or something a little more niche. With respect to the design process, it's something that's taken us time. It's not something that I would say we've mastered. It's because we were there when the market was a lot, I wouldn't even say new, when the market was just taking shape. I think we had partners also who were a lot more patient with us, where even they understood that if you're going to develop something, it will take time. So we were fortunate to have a very patient set of stakeholders, where I think that becomes our competitive advantage now, because with the industry finally being recognized, with a lot of people talking about India as a great potential market, I think now that gives us a great head start, because that patience will wear thin, because now people are expecting results from day one. It's not something that they would be as patient to develop. So yeah, I think design was acquired. We've seen a lot of people come and go, but it's something that now has become our strength, and it's something that any other company also just needs to spend that time to acquire. It's not something you can just hope to get right for the first time.
Yeah, I think I've witnessed that myself. So Manchester City, the initial range plan, the last range plan that we've gotten from Sudhiti, I think it was so pretty, so beautiful that the brand had approved the entire range without any changes. So that's remarkable for any licensee. So I also believe sports licensing specifically has grown a bit in past 2 3 years, and people have started moving from cricket to football to basketball, and with the great and the beautiful portfolio that you have. Tell us a little more about the transition in the thought process of your customers. So is it still discount oriented or value oriented, or they're more keen to spend like a 200 $300 more on an authentic merchandise? Has that changed a little bit? Have you witnessed some changes in your target customers in past 3 years?
I think what changed more than the customer actually was, it was our mindset, because we were also very heavily influenced by what's happening around us in the industry. So obviously, your leading e-com players have made it a very standardized best practice that, flat 60% off, flat 50% off.
Yeah.
And it's something that if you go back 10 years, in offline retail was not a done thing. It might have been a one-day event in the entire season's calendar, for a clearance sale. I think it put a lot of pressure on the industry first, that either it became a price war. Either you meet these discounts, or you see lower sales. And that pressure led to obviously people chasing targets, chasing certain growth expectations they had. But as of today, now how we look at it is it's the reverse. I think the customer was always willing to pay. The customer was always looking out for good product. This highly discounted fast fashion market, if you actually look at these customers, read a lot of their comments, read a lot of the emails you get, because to meet those discounted prices, there is a certain compromise you make in product. And eventually, these guys are just looking for a stable brand that they can follow, a stable brand that they can wear from. And we realized that let's just spend that much more time, create that kind of value. As you mentioned, the range, we went out and, rather than looking at product and design cost, we said, let's go all out, let's give a range that, the customer would really like to sport. And let's price it competitively, but not with the target of discounting. In fact, almost minimal to no discounting going forward, so that it's something the customer won't feel cheated if they buy it on day one and felt could we have bought on day 40. It's something that, because again, we're in it for the long run, it will not dilute the brand's image, because in licensing, ultimately you're playing with a logo. And unlike fashion brands, the fashion can change, but the logo will never change in a licensed brand. So if you discount, let's say, a Man City logo for 60% off, how do you convince that customer in the long run to buy that same logo the next season at full price? So eventually, what you'll see is you're degrading even the brand you're working with. You're reduced. So in the short run, you might be hitting targets, but in the long run, you would be seeing that there will be a dip in your sales. There will be a dip in your customer retention. And eventually, once you've reached everyone there is to reach, you will ask yourself, now what? So our strategy has changed. It's more towards give the best product, engage the fans that are there that they would like to buy again, rather than just try and reach everyone at hyper low prices. So it's something that I think the customer has not really changed much. Obviously, the customer will take advantage of deals they get, but I think it's more the mindset of the seller that had been changing.
Absolutely. Harsh, I believe when we comes to the sports merchandise, so there's a very limited existing fan base which is already there, and they would be irrespective of whatever the because if I'm a fan following of Chennai Super Kings, I'll be willing to have a merchandise of that. Okay. I might look out for what offers may be going on, but I won't be having that very much in terms of the pricing. Okay. Yeah, and as you rightly said, there has to be a quick balance in terms of the product designing, in terms of the the value proposition that you are giving to the customers, and in terms of the pricing as well. Okay, so that's where it creates a whole outstanding performance of the merchandising actually. Okay. I would like to also understand when it comes to the Indian clubs or the leagues, I would say specifically, and when it comes to the comparison with the international players, right from FCB or maybe Man City, okay, India we have seen there is a very restricted seasonal, time frame which is there. Maybe if an IPL is coming, so it's going to last for only 3 4 months. Okay, but when I talk about NBA, so it's a year all round. The merchandise are selling out. Okay, so haven't you found that a ratio to be matched out, or haven't you thought of coming up with something which gives a a value added advantage so that you can create a merchandise or a range of merchandise which is going to be 24/7 and 365 days of the year. Let's say even for the IPL or a Pro Kabaddi or any specific Indian league that you are working with.
Yeah. So I think first I'll touch upon what you mentioned, the league format, which is the duration of the league. I think the difference here is that because the IPL is something that's so short, a league format. I think in terms of length, the NBA would be maybe the longest, followed by the football leagues, which are slightly shorter, but yet I would say about 8 to 9 months. And going into your cricket, which is so hyper in these 2.5, 3 months, it's got its pros and cons because what happens is your IPL merchandise sells almost like our FIFA World Cup merchandise sold. The depth of sales was a lot higher in the time frame that we had because the customer, the audience is bombarded with IPL news, IPL media, IPL content, and that does create a higher impulse to buy as opposed to when you're doing an NBA or a football league. Always you will have that how you have risk and reward. You'll always have that trade-off of duration of the league and the impulse to buy. The longer the duration of the league, you will spend a lot more time in trying to convince someone to buy your product. The shorter the duration of the league, it's a lot easier because that's all they see, that's all they hear about, and there's already that top of the mind recall for that brand. So there is a good impulse, a strong impulse to buy. That being said, we are and we always have created lifestyle merchandise. We've never created something that's very seasonal, that's very logo driven. Because when it's something that's logo driven, you will have a customer that does not want to sport that logo after the IPL, let's say, because it's not something that they can relate to. They don't want to be a hoarding for something that's not relevant. But the minute as a product creator, you focus on merchandise that is more fashion driven, that uses the logo more as a identification of quality of brand value, as opposed to that being the reason why they buy your product. it's something that you will automatically see the customer will want to wear it in the longer run, because then the brand is just something that assures them of quality. It's something that makes them feel good because it's a club they follow. It could be a conversation starter, but it doesn't touch upon the relevance of the brand, because relevance, when it's just a big logo, that has to do with relevance and duration of the league. So I think strategies would be different, obviously, because during IPL you need to be geared to really use each day. So that's a different sales strategy. But if you want to take advantage of that, at the same time have your sales curves throughout the year at least being at 30% or 50% of during peak season, you need to even have a product strategy that supports that.
Completely agree, Harsh, and I believe even for the fashion brands, if I talk about the other fashion brands who are operating in the retail, so they also have a very specific season where they actually accumulate the sale. Maybe it's the festive season, or maybe this, the end of summer season, or that's where the they actually accumulate the entire sales throughout the year. उनकी अगर मैं, if I talk about the entire sales that they generate throughout the year, so maybe I would say it's September to February. That's where the whole portion of the sales comes up for the fashion brands as well. And I believe that is what has been replicated for the sports brands as well. Any league or any club or any sporting event which is coming up. And I completely agree that you have to have a impactful sales strategy. While placing out the merchandise in the market, what kind of a time frame that you're working on, what kind of cross promotions that you're working on, what kind of marketing activities that you're working on, so that you are able to maximize and leverage on the time frame or the or the tenure that event is lasting for. With the same thing, when we talk about the current situation, which is coming, upcoming this pandemic situation that we are going through, this COVID-19, how would you define the rise of m-commerce and e-commerce partnerships, and how easy it has been become, in doing the collaborations with them? Because I believe that's what one of the most successful stories that we have, with the rise of Flipkart and likes of them. So I would like to have your thoughts on this.
Uh, I mean, obviously, when e-commerce started, we thought it was completely absurd to sell T-shirts online, because it's something that very traditionally anybody in their right mind would want to interact with the product, want to try the product, see the quality. I think in e-commerce, still one of the biggest reasons for return is it didn't fit the customer how they thought it would. So obviously, at that time, it seemed really absurd, but e-commerce has definitely seen a change, not just because of the people that started the websites, but even their supporting ecosystem that saw it as an opportunity. So cash on delivery is something that's very uniquely in India. It's something that So e-commerce definitely, from then to now, you can't imagine life without e-commerce, even in apparel. Touching upon m-commerce is an evolution of e-commerce, where the smartphone has become as accessible as ever. The iPhone being something then very old, very expensive, very elite. I think smartphones now are a lot more accessible. Data is a lot more affordable. So m-com is just an evolution of e-com. With respect to how it affects our industry, and especially during COVID, I think during this pandemic, obviously offline retail has suffered. It's but natural that people would not be willing to venture out into crowded spaces, would not be willing to touch and feel so many different things that so many different people have touched and felt, on product. And that's why ecom has been a great savior. It's been a great pivot for most brands that haven't taken that pivot will be doing it now, or in the process of setting up that infrastructure. So it's been a great savior for brands. It's been a great alternative, and at the same time, I think it's been a great catalyst, because e-commerce was very naturally the future of our industry. A lot of people were migrating to e-commerce at their own pace. A lot of people were migrating to e-commerce at a very limited exposure. That offline is our greatest strength. Even for us, offline was one of our greatest strengths. It's something now that COVID has just acted as such a strong catalyst that it just pushed you to get there instantly or die, because how do you maintain your backend? How do you maintain? So e-commerce is extremely relevant. It's a life raft if you are able to migrate, if you had one foot in that door. It's also an area a lot of people are looking to get to. With respect to sports licensing, e-commerce, m-commerce, I think the biggest boon here actually is social media. So what happens with these sports especially is content is consumed so much on your phone because any in transit moment, I mean, we're so used to traffic, we're so used to waiting for a train, for a bus, for an Ola, Uber, for people. And I think any of those in transit moments leads us to consume content either on social media, it leads us to be on e-commerce websites. And with respect to social media, the Indian audience in sports licensing, I mean, you can do two things, right? You have your clubs that are now really taking a focus also on India. So I think just a few days back, I saw Tottenham Hotspur had a Diwali post. I think Man City had a post on Diwali, I think yesterday or day before.
True.
I see Chelsea on their social media handle, they had a session with Arjun Kapoor as well as they keep doing an India based content segment on their main handle. So these things, if you actually read the comments, you will see that a lot of Indian people, I don't know if they're customers, I don't know if they're fans, but they're actually really happy at being recognized as a market, as a fan base. And these obviously lead to brand recall. Now, when partners like us also get involved, when we also have ads, we target these people, you create a direct impulse to sell. And that's where MCOM comes in. Ecom has allowed you to target the entire country rather than the geography that your store is in. And MCOM has allowed you to target these people not just whenever they're free, they go on a website and they stumble upon your product, but actually through the creation of an impulse, which is a very, very big deal because traditionally marketing would be I see a hoarding, I see a hoarding twice, it's created recall in my mind. Maybe I see that product by discovery on the shelf and I'll end up buying it. But MCOM has created such a bombardment of content that it creates very instant impulses and it creates very instant gratification. So I think that is something that if anybody in the licensing space, product space, retail space can use well, it's a very big advantage.
Of course, Sash. I believe the version that we are sitting at is the version 3.0, where the product reaches the customer. Initially people, used to go out with the internet, look out for products. Now the product actually is reaching out to the customer.
Yeah.
And I believe, the way, the e-commerce has set up the entire distribution, the ease of doing business has become so easy, or ease of, having multiple partnership or association has become so easy that, people are actually coming up with multiple opportunities. And that's where people are also coming up with a new demands, because that demand and supply channel has both to be met. Basically, you had earlier also, if I talk about the fan base of all this sporting clubs or events, it was there initially also, but they didn't have the options to buy it then, and that's where I believe, companies like you created that miracles and came up with this entire option or the merchandises where people are able to actually go out and buy them and actually wear them and cheer up their favorite clubs or the fans. Another thing I would like to understand, coming from the selection process when it comes to the working on a brand or working on a a club or a sporting event. So there's two things which matters. One is the fan base of the of the club, okay, and the other thing is the talent of the club. Okay, so there might be okay, Dhoni as one of the famous cricketers, or the one of the major uh, fan following who has, and then you have a Mumbai Indians, okay, which is again has a X amount of fan base which is again associated with them. So what are the key differentiators that you work on? Is it the fan base that you work on as a club as a whole, or as a league as a whole, or you also pick up choose that okay, this is one of the talents which is very famous with this club, so let's focus on this club, because these are the two three club sorry these are the two three talents which are already present with the club. They already has a huge existing fan base where we can actually capitalize on. So how do you keep that understanding when it comes to the club and the talent?
I think so. Talent and fan base. So I mean, it depends on even the club's marketing strategy. So I mean, how you mentioned the Mumbai Indians, you see them talk much lesser about uh, one player, then you see them talk more about like what is the main tagline they use is one family. They really involve a lot of their players in their marketing. They involve a lot of players in their content. CSK does that too, but yes, when you think CSK, the first thing you think is Dhoni. I mean, it starts with the club's marketing strategy, because obviously that the content you create is the translation of that content would be what the customers would have an impulse to flaunt, wear, or talk about. That being said, I think obviously if there was a strong personality in that sports franchise, in that club, and you have access to using elements that can recall that sports personality also onto your garment. Yes, it does make a difference because you can reach those customers a lot faster. You can target them not just through fans of the club, but you can also target just that personality's fans as well. Because someone like Dhoni is not just in CSK, he's actually the ex captain of India. So there's now suddenly a much larger fan base. So how that helps is, at least if it's your own country, and if the personality is that large, it definitely helps, because let's say even if it's an RCB, I know that I'm not just targeting RCB fans. If I make the merchandise ambiguous enough, but it's got certain Virat elements in it, or just because Virat is part of RCB, I might actually sell this merchandise outside Bangalore because there are so many Virat fans in the country. So I think depending on how the club has obviously postured their players, depending on the relevance of that player in the landscape outside the fan base of that club. Because if you talk about a club where the player is popular but popular within the fan base of the club, then that doesn't create extra demand for you. But yes, it helps you create a lot more relevant product for those customers.
True, 100%. That's, I believe, the individuality of any player or a talent is something which is very important. How expandable it is, what kind of aura that we can look beyond to the sports franchise or the club is too. So that's where actually we need to work out what kind of geographies or what kind of demographics that we can target on. So that's really wonderful. So Shipka, is there anything you want to go ahead with?
Yeah, I think I would like to touch base on two more points before we go for the closing statements. Harsh, I would want your thoughts on the counterfeit products, since you have almost all the top sports IPs in your portfolio. How difficult it is to avoid, or how do you tackle the counterfeit range which is out there in the market?
Yeah, I think India traditionally, because we didn't have these brands in India, has traditionally been a counterfeit market. I mean, even when I was a kid, I knew of these clubs. That time I wasn't a fan of any of these clubs. And I think bulk of the people I would see if I would go for a football class or for a basketball class, they would all be wearing counterfeit merchandise. And it never once struck me that, hey, this guy is wearing a fake product. It was just like, oh my God, where did you get that FCB jersey from? Even I want it. So I think traditionally we've not even been exposed to the idea that there is something as counterfeit and original. By which I mean that obviously since we are in the industry, we now look at this product as counterfeit. But I think there would get be a lot of people in India who even buy through MCOM, because I follow these clubs. I am very engaged with these clubs because it's my business. So I'll end up being also a prime target for Instagram ads for this counterfeit merchandise. I see so much counterfeit merchandise. And initially, our approach used to be, oh, we found one more, let's try and do something about it. I think in India, there are so many. Our approach has now become that how do we consistently take this brand's language and create a product execution. It could be the crest execution, it could be the overall design aesthetic, it could be elements around that product. That just when you get that, when the customer gets that, they realize that, okay, this is what an original product looks like. Because there is no way that I can go out there. I think I must be following almost, I follow all these guys, whoever sell counterfeit. And there must be, for my own brands, at least 30 people who sell counterfeit merchandise. And counterfeit, as in, I get so excited when I sign a club, when I sign a new property. And these guys are very openly selling every club, every property, but you can't stop it. You can't, you can only learn from them that how these people uh, are engaging with their customers, because without having the license, they're managing to engage with so many people. So I think just that person definitely must be a fan of the sport. So just take a page out of their book. But if you try and stop all of them, you will lose sight of your actual business and just be trying to stop in, especially an unorganized market like India. You'll be trying to stop a lot of counterfeit product. You just need to create the right product. Obviously, price it such that a customer who might be a fan would actually think, you know what, it's okay if it's counterfeit because I can't afford the alternative. So you need to price it also well enough that the decision to buy an original product, which looks original, which feels original, is not that hard. It's just a matter of discoverability. That hey, I didn't know that original merchandise was available in India. So I think to create that emotion, it's a lot of other things that go into play, and I think that is what, at least at Sudhiti, we strive to do, because that way we always look forward, we always look at innovating, we always look at ingraining the brand's personality more and more into our product season on season.
So I think the second question that I'm about to ask you is a little related. And yes, India has been flooded with counterfeit products, but then it's very important to maintain yourself and make yourself a very exclusive outlet for that authentic merchandise. When people think about an FCB merchandise, they should think about Sudhiti or coming to you or your website or your modern retail for the product, which again will take some time, but uh, compared to what it was 10 years back to the last couple of years, it's still improving, it's still gradually improving. Also, the brand has a very important role to play in this the entire process. So, we are managing a lot of IPs, and we come across a lot of sites selling the counterfeit products. We make sure that all the links, all the websites, all these people are being reported well to the brand, so that they could, take uh, relevant measures to stop them or prohibit them for selling those. So, my next question is about the future for coming 2 3 years. What do you have in store for Sudhiti for next 2 years or next 3 years? Is there a very specific EBO that you have in mind for, say, an exclusive outlet for all the sports merchandise, or any new brands that you have in mind? So, what are the future plans?
I mean, see, the future for Sudhiti is definitely going to be getting aggressive in this space, because we have so many learnings, we have so much know-how, which, as you'd mentioned, product design, it could be placing the product offline, placing it with all key retailers online. It could be leveraging our manufacturing strength. So, I mean, we're very well geared to actually uh, be a big part of this growth story in India. Things you mentioned like EBOs, signing more brands, I think that is a very standard part of this journey for it, something that is definitely in the cards. It's something that's definitely in the path over the next 2 3 years, because with respect to licenses, we're very aggressive, we're very long term, which is why we really actually are enjoying developing even opportunities in the ISL, opportunities in Pro Kabaddi, opportunities, in any league that we see that there, as long as there are customers. So we're not just chasing after all the big names, all the, established names. We're actually trying to create a very holistic business. We're trying to reach as many fans, because in this journey, it's not the customers you acquire, at least that's our motto, it's the ones you retain. So it's about how can we just consistently keep growing with the people that we retain.
Sure.
Absolutely.
I think we've come to the closure of the series right now. Already short of time. Any closing
Any
comments
last?
from your end,
Yeah.
Vatsal, and then we move on to the closing session.
No, I certainly believe the revolution that the Indian sports licensing industry is seeing is because of the players like Sudhiti. Actually, they have been, as I said earlier as well. We did had a lot of existing fan base, and before also, but we didn't have the options of actually going out and buying those in the market. We had many football clubs, we had many people who were looking out for this merchandise, but it wasn't easily actually available. You had to go out, somewhere. It was a by chance, thing that if you, came across some kind of a Man City T-shirts in, suburban market or something like that. But that's where, the entire retail has been set up, by players like you. Any last comments on the upcoming trends that you see, Harsh, there is sports licensing industry in India?
I mean, yeah, I think as I think you all mentioned even in the opening of this conversation, India is definitely shifting towards a sports culture. I mean, before so that starts actually at at the grassroots because before it was either you make it in the Indian team or okay you play the Ranji Trophy or whatever, but the real recognition is the Indian team. So I think it starts at the grassroots that now there is recognition for a lot more players, which means there's a lot more opportunity. So that is what builds firstly the culture in the country. And I think our country is seeing that build up in so many sports. And once we culturally transition into a country that values sports, that promotes sports, even at the grassroots, even with kids, even with our kids, you will see a very big shift in the way these clubs, in the way these leagues are reacting. So I think I would like to compare us to, let's say, the US, which is, I think, the most mature market in sports licensing,
True.
where I think the minute you enter college, you have
Absolutely.
people in US colleges all buying their college merchandise for their college football teams. They all go for their college football games. Uh, you move into sports. If I'm from LA, I'm most likely going to love either the Dodgers or the Lakers, and I want to wear that merchandise. I want to make my kid wear that merchandise, take them for the game. So I think India is heading there. We have a long way, but as long as we keep seeing cultural shifts where sports becomes more and more a part of our life, you will even see the leagues taking decisions, even in their communication, maybe even in their color combinations, maybe even in their logo, that actually become a lot more easier to monetize, which currently might not be the case for all the teams, all the leagues you work with. But I think e-com is there. I think there's a lot of free flowing information online. So people are learning, and I don't know the speed, but I think we're definitely going there.
100%, Harsh. I believe the way the birth of leagues which has come up in India in the last couple of years, and they have actually did really well. The kind of broadcasting channels, I would give a thumbs up to them also. They have actually highlighted and the kind of marketing strategies that they have also used. Bringing in the talents, bringing in to the table or the platforms and getting that connectivity with everybody. Even if somebody is not a following of that particular sports, but he's also started watching that. And I think that has been a huge gain in the last couple of years, basically. And we really look forward to have an amazing, more merchandises from Sudhiti in the coming years as well. And we are looking forward to many more associations also with this. So thank you so much, Harsh. It was wonderful having you today. So we will be coming again for the next week's webinar that is, with another host, another brand. So look forward to. So thank you so much, Harsh. Thank you, Shipra.
Thank you, everyone, and wishing you a very happy Diwali from the entire Bradford team. And hope the next year brings a lot of good news for everyone. Thank you so much for the time again. Bye bye.
Happy Diwali, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Thank you, Harsh. Thank you.
See you.